you're looking to put even more money than that away, you could be eligible for something called the 15-year rule, which is when you've been an employee of your school district for 15 years and your average annual contributions have been less than $5,000 per year, then you're eligible to contribute an additional $3,000 contribution per year up to a lifetime maximum catch-up of $15,000. So you could make this additional $3,000 annual contribution on top of the 403B maximum, which this year is $26,000.
Are you ready for a successful retirement? We're addressing the topics facing today's retirees. Welcome to Retire with Ryan. Now here's your host, Ryan Morrissey.
Welcome back. This week I'm continuing my series on talking about topics affecting Connecticut teachers, and this week I'm going to talk about the 403B account and how to not get schooled as a teacher on your 403B account. And there are 8 things that I'm going to cover about 403B accounts that you should listen to make sure that you're making the most of your 403B account and not getting taken advantage of. And the first thing about a 403B account, exactly what is a 403B account? So 403B account is a retirement plan available to employees of educational institutions and certain nonprofit organizations as determined by Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. And 403B accounts can cover both people working for universities, hospitals, and colleges, and we're not going to cover those today. We're going to really focus on the 403B accounts that apply to people working as teachers in Connecticut in grades K through 12. And these can be accounts where you're contributing on a pre-tax basis, where you're then taking the money out and paying tax in retirement, or on a Roth basis, where you're first paying tax on the money, and then when it comes out, it's tax-free. So if you're not familiar with that, definitely go back and listen to my episode on whether to use a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. And you're putting money in through your payroll, and you then determine, how much you want to put into the account. And exactly who is eligible to contribute to these accounts brings me to point number 2, and that is if you're an employee of the town that you teach in, then you're eligible to contribute. And this could be teachers, school administrators, school personnel, nurses, even substitute teachers, I believe, are eligible to contribute to these accounts. And point number 3, how much can you contribute? Well, you can contribute up to the IRS maximum for 2021, which is $19,500. And then if you're over 50, you're eligible to make a catch-up contribution on top of that of $6,500. So there's a $26,000 contribution limit that you can contribute. And if you're looking to put even more money than that away, you could be eligible for something called the 15-year rule, which is when you've been an employee of your school district for 15 years and your average annual contributions have been less than $5,000 per year, then you're eligible to contribute an additional $3,000 contribution per year up to a lifetime maximum catch-up of $15,000. So you could make this additional $3,000 annual contribution on top of the 403B maximum, which this year is $26,000. So point number 4 is, how do you start a 403B? And you start it through your employer. As I mentioned earlier, it's done through payroll contributions. So each employer has their own salary reduction agreement, which is where you'd fill it out and request a certain amount of money to come out of your paycheck, and then you designate which provider that you're going to use. And this is really where things get tricky. And the main inspiration for this episode is that there are a number of providers that you can select from, and most of them are very bad options. And why do I say that they're very bad options? Because most of these providers are actually annuity providers, insurance companies. And historically, annuities, that is, most of them are variable annuities, have very high fees relative to a non-annuity option. And the non-annuity option would be where you're using a mutual fund option for your 403B. Sometimes with 403B accounts, you hear them referred to as annuities or tax-sheltered annuities, and that's because when they were first created, they were only annuities, and you had to set them up with insurance companies. But since 1974, they've been able to be mutual fund investment accounts as well. So they don't have to be an annuity anymore. And so if you're using one of these annuity-based options, you could be paying unnecessary fees, as well as your money could be tied up for a number of years. And there's something called a surrender schedule, which most variable annuities have. And what that means is that once you start investing in the annuity, there's a period of time that you have to leave your money in the annuity. And then if you want to take it out during that time frame, you have to pay a penalty. So let's just say your surrender schedule was a 7-year surrender. So once you start your 403B account, you're then locked into it for 7 years. And if you want to take your money out in that 7-year period, you have to pay a penalty, which is quite ridiculous that something that you're saving for retirement that is through your school district that you'd have to be subject to this. But this is how it works. So what you'd want to do is you'd want to research the available vendors, and you'd want to find one that has a lower cost product. And you're generally going to see that when you're using a non-insurance based option. Someone like Vanguard, Fidelity, a new entrant into the field is Aspire. And I work with a number of teachers, and through the primary custodian I use, TD Ameritrade, they are an available option in one of the school districts that I work with the city of West Haven. There's also another option too if you're working with an advisor, Security Benefit, which traditionally is an insurance company. So they do have a lot of high cost annuity options, but they have a low cost option where you're not subject to a surrender schedule and you're able to choose from low cost mutual funds. And there's also some actively managed funds as well. So you really want to investigate that. And that's where working with a fee-only financial planner such as myself can really be very helpful. Because how do most people actually get invested in a 403B account is that traditionally one of these insurance-based companies, AXA, MetLife, will come into the school, they'll do a free lunch, maybe give you some free stuff, right? Some pencils, pens, whatever it is. And you get signed up and you're never really told about all of the costs involved in the product. And it's really probably a number of years later until somebody educates you that you understand, wow, I'm paying an extra 3%, maybe even more of fees in this product. And I could not be doing that by using one of the options that has mutual fund option or has relatively low cost. So you want to find out from your school district where that list is. And one good thing that has come about in recent years is that most 403B or most school districts have hired a third-party administrator to actually oversee this. So it's a lot easier now to find the list that you can select from. And from there, you can then look at the list and you'd want to find a mutual fund-based company. If you're going to be working with an advisor, you'd want to find a registered investment advisor who is going to work with you on a fee basis to manage your account if that's what you're looking for, so that you can get set up with something that's appropriate. And so the next point is that, let's say this is all new to you and you're finding out, whoa, I didn't realize I was paying all these fees in my account. I didn't realize that my money was subject to surrender schedule. Or maybe you're just not getting a lot of advice or any advice and you're looking for that and you want to move it out to another advisor, a fee-only advisor who can help you. How do you transfer? Well, as long as you're outside of the surrender schedule and you have another option within your school district, you could transfer to that option. Let's say you were with AXA and you wanted to go to TD Ameritrade or you wanted to go to Fidelity. Well, then you could just do an in-service transfer and you could move it to that other provider. Another option is that once you retire from teaching or if you take a different job, then you also can do a rollover and you could roll it to an IRA anywhere and you wouldn't be limited to just 403B options because you're now separated from service. And if the money wasn't all out of surrender, then you could leave some of it behind. And then when the remaining money was out of surrender, you could then move that. And you'd also want to make sure you change your payroll contribution so that you stop contributing to that old company if it was no longer appropriate. And sometimes these companies can be easier to work with than others. Sometimes they're pretty good about calling them up and asking them for the paperwork to be able to move money out of the account. But you can also go to your new company that you're going to be working with and you can request the paperwork, the transfer paperwork from them. And sometimes that can also make it easier. But I can tell you from working with a number of clients who have 403B accounts, it can be a little difficult and a little arduous moving the money, from one company to another. And that brings me to point number 6. How much do 403B investment fees matter? Well, they matter a great deal. If you just think about, let's just assume for the next 10 years that stock market is only going to be able to deliver us an average return of 6%. You might have heard this. This is something that people are talking about. And why are they talking about this? Well, because we've had such a good run in the last 10 years in the stock market that usually when you have a good period, it's followed by maybe a period of lesser returns. So let's just say the stock market is going to give you a 6% return, but you're paying 3% in fees in your high cost variable annuity 403B product. Well, that means that you're only going to make a 3% return. So that means your return is going to be half of what it otherwise would have been over the next 10 years. Well, if you could reduce that fee maybe by 1%, maybe even by 2% or more, that's all going to go to your bottom line. And that's something that I look to help clients with, is because I work as a fiduciary for clients and all fee-only financial planners do, we're focused on fees and we're focused on minimizing those fees wherever we can, where it makes sense. So that is a way that you can immediately improve the results of your 403B account by moving to a lower cost or a low cost 403B option. That brings me to point number 7. What investment company can I choose? And as I mentioned before, that's all dependent upon the vendors that your school district or your city chooses to work with. And that's really one of the biggest criticisms of the K through 12 403B market, is that a lot of times you're only really selecting from insurance companies that are going to charge you high fees. And those are the types of, I would say, agents, they're really not advisors, that you're going to see coming into your school. So you have to do the research and scour the list, maybe use the help of a fee-only financial planner to help you look through the list and examine the options available to you to see what the best selection is. And if you had a really bad list, then it could make sense not even to contribute to a 403B altogether. It could even make sense to forgo the 403B account and either use a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, or maybe just use a taxable investment account if really you have very poor choices that you're going to be working with. If you don't have good choices, one thing you can do is you can put some pressure on your school district. You can reach out to your human resources director, your finance director, and you can have a conversation with them about maybe what you see as how they can improve the list. And you can maybe look to get a lower cost provider on there, depending upon if you're looking to do it yourself, a Fidelity or a Vanguard, or if you're looking for the help of an advisor, maybe something like a TD Ameritrade. And if you are eligible, some Connecticut state teachers are actually eligible to use the state-based 403B or 457 option. That could be a good alternative for you as well, because with the state-based plan, the state is held to fiduciary obligation. The plan is covered by ERISA. So they actually go through the process of selecting one vendor. In this case, now it's Prudential. It was ING before, but that's a relatively low-cost plan, and there's no surrender schedule, so your money's available whenever you want it. And so that's a better option for you than the probably your town-based or city-based 403B provider list that they have available to you. And this brings to my last point, and that is, what types of investments can you use in your 403B? And they really fall into one of two categories, either mutual fund-based or annuity-based. So as I mentioned earlier, with 403B accounts, if you use a mutual fund company such as Vanguard, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, you're dealing with mutual funds, and with mutual funds, you'd really want to be using no-load mutual funds or using mutual funds where the load is waived, because that way you're not paying commissions to buy these mutual funds, and that's what you would get with Fidelity, Vanguard, TD Ameritrade. There could be other options available that I'm not mentioning. You wouldn't want to be paying a commission every time you bought or sold a mutual fund. There's also, some of them do offer you a fixed annuity, and this would be similar to investing in like a bond or a CD where you're earning a fixed rate of interest. Let's just say you earn 2% a year. If you're a really conservative investor, that could be a good option for you, but I'd probably make the argument that you're not going to really get very far, only earning a couple percent per year. So you might want to think about taking on some more risk than that. Some of these also offer you an equity indexed annuity. This is sometimes portrayed as being a better option than a fixed annuity because your return is tied to an index like the S&P 500, but in many instances you don't do better than the fixed annuity. And then the last option, which we talked about earlier, would be the variable annuity. And variable annuities are essentially like mutual funds with an insurance wrapper. where you're able to invest in accounts that are similar to mutual funds, but the standard variable annuity has a death benefit associated with it. So let's just say that you invested in the 403b account for years. You would put in $100,000, and when you passed away, the markets had gone down and your account was now only worth $80,000. Well, then the insurance company will pay you back that difference and they'll give you $100,000. Well, I should say they'll pay your heirs back, your beneficiaries. So it really doesn't benefit you. You have to die to get it. And you're paying extra costs for that, much higher costs than you would in a low cost or index-based mutual fund portfolio. So that's really where the criticism is. Some of these have added another option, something called a living benefit, which guarantees you a certain amount of income in your retirement. But this increases the fees even further. So you want to really be careful if you have one of these and about buying a new one, because chances are you're not really going to get a whole lot of benefit out of it over your lifetime. I'm definitely not a fan of these. So with all of these, you want to read the prospectus. If you're thinking of investing in any annuity product, you want to read the prospectus. Prospectuses can be very confusing, even to financial planners such as myself. So you want to get some help possibly with looking at these if you don't understand what you're reading. So I hope this gives you some information on the 403b, K through 12 investment market. And if you're in a 403b that you don't understand, definitely get some help. Or if you're just getting into this, research the available list that your school district provides and, seek out a low cost mutual fund provider if that option's available to you, or if not, maybe try to get one added to your plan. I want to thank everyone for continuing to listen. Last week, I released episode 52. That means that I have made it to 1 year of podcasting, quite a milestone. When I started this, I wasn't sure I'd get to this point, but I have. So I want to continue to thank everyone for your continued listening. And as I've asked before, if you haven't left a comment for me in Apple Podcast or left me a 5-star review, I'd greatly appreciate that. So take out your iPhone, go to Apple Podcasts, search Retire with Ryan, and leave me that review. I'd really appreciate it. Take care.
You should consult a financial advisor familiar with your specific circumstances before you make any financial decisions. Nothing in this broadcast constitutes a solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Any mention of rates of return are historical or hypothetical in nature and are not a guarantee of future returns. Ryan Morrissey, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Morrissey Wealth Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor.